she was left for being just a nurse. 9 years later, she returns as chief of surgery at his hospital empire with his son. The words asterisk, you're fired, asterisk hung in the air like a blade. Dr. Evelyn Hart, back then simply Nurse Evelyn Hart, stood frozen in the doorway of the executive boardroom of Vail Memorial Hospital, her badge still clipped to her scrubs. Behind the vast mahogany desk sat Grayson Vail, the man she'd married just 6 months earlier, the heir to Boston's most powerful medical dynasty. He didn't look up immediately. When he did, the warmth she'd once found in his eyes had been replaced by a boardroom chill. "Grayson, what are you talking about?" she whispered. He leaned back, every inch the polished CEO his family had groomed. "I'm talking about the fact that my wife working as a nurse in my own hospital is becoming an embarrassment, Evelyn. People are talking. Investors, partners. They say Grayson Vail couldn't even marry within his own circle." The words struck like open-handed slaps. Evelyn's fingers brushed her still flat stomach. The secret she planned to share with him that night. A child. "An embarrassment?" she said softly. "I'm your wife." He exhaled through his nose, a humorless laugh. "Love doesn't change who you are. You're brilliant, yes, but you're just a nurse." The Vail name carries expectations. Have you ever had the person you trusted most tear down everything you are and call it worthless? That moment would burn itself into Evelyn Hart's bones. This is the story of the woman he threw away for being beneath his name, the woman who rose to become the most powerful surgeon in the country. What Grayson Vail doesn't know is that she carries a secret that's been walking the earth for 9 years, with his gray eyes and his unbreakable will. Stay with me. 9 years later, the morning sun washed Boston Harbor in gold, spilling through the glass walls of Vail Memorial's top floor. Dr. Evelyn Hart stood at her office window, white coat crisp, her hair neatly tied back. At 34, she had become one of the youngest chiefs of surgery in the nation. Hospitals across the country fought to recruit her. Medical journals studied her techniques. She'd built a life that no family could buy and no man could take away. And she'd built it right here, inside the same hospital that once spat her out. Her assistant's voice came over the intercom. "Dr. Hart, your 9 a.m. meeting is here. The new board chairman wants to meet you personally." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Send him in." The door opened, and the world tilted. Grayson Vail stepped into her office. He looked older, harder, silver threaded through his dark hair. Faint lines framed those same eyes that had once looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered. But he still carried himself with that quiet arrogance, the kind that came from being born to power. "Dr. Hart," he said, offering a hand. "Grayson Vail, chairman of Vail Medical Group." For one terrifying second, she thought he recognized her. He didn't. "Mr. Vail," she replied smoothly. "Welcome to Vail Memorial." "Your reputation precedes you," he said, scanning the file in his hand. "Harvard Med, residency at Johns Hopkins, fellowship at the Mayo Clinic. Impressive." The irony nearly made her laugh. The same man who had once told her she wasn't good enough to bear his name was now praising her credentials. "Thank you," she said evenly. "In this field, anything less than excellence costs lives." Spoken like a leader, he replied, "Tell me, Dr. Hart, what brought you to Vail Memorial? You could work anywhere." "I was drawn by the hospital's reputation," she said, letting her gaze rest on him for a beat, "and the opportunity to lead a department that values innovation over tradition. If he caught the barb, he didn't show it. You've certainly delivered results. Patient outcomes have improved by 30% since you took charge. Surgical success rates, best in the state. I have an exceptional team," she said. "But leadership starts at the top." For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Something in her voice, it tugged at him. Faintly familiar, like a melody half remembered. Then he cleared his throat. "Your file mentions you're a single mother. That must make your schedule challenging." Her pulse jumped. The file said Noah Hart, age 9. Nothing more. "I manage just fine," she said. "I'm sure you do," he replied. "Work-life balance is something I've been thinking about lately." There was weariness in his tone now. the fatigue of a man who'd built an empire only to find himself alone inside it. "Do you have children, Mr. Vale?" she asked. A flicker, pain, regret, crossed his face. "No. My ex-wife and I were never able to." Her chest tightened. Ex-wife? So the marriage he'd thrown her away for had already collapsed. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said softly. "Sometimes what we think we want isn't what makes us happy." Before he could answer, a knock at the door. "Come in." A boy bounded in. 9 years old, dark hair, gray eyes bright as glass. "Mom, Miss Peterson said I could see your office before school." He stopped short when he saw Grayson. "Oh, sorry, I didn't know you had a meeting." Evelyn's heart stopped. "Noah," she said gently. "This is Mr. Vale, the chairman of the hospital board." "Hello, sir," Noah said politely, offering his hand. Grayson shook it, eyes narrowing slightly. "Well, hello, Noah. That's quite a handshake." "My mom says a handshake tells people who you are before you even talk." The boy replied. "Your mother is very wise," Grayson said, his voice a shade unsteady. He couldn't stop staring. The boy's eyes, his own, that same stubborn jawline, the same quiet self-possession. "What grade are you in?" he asked. "Fourth, but I'm taking some fifth-grade classes. I'm going to be a doctor like Mom." "A surgeon?" "Yeah. She saves people's lives every day. She's the best doctor in the whole hospital." Evelyn's throat tightened. Noah was everything she'd ever dreamed of, brilliant, kind, unshakably confident. He was also living proof of the man across from her, the man who had once called her unworthy. "Noah," she said gently, "Mrs. Peterson is waiting downstairs." "Okay." He hugged her quickly. "Nice meeting you, Mr. Vale." "Nice meeting you too, Noah," Grayson said quietly. The door closed, leaving the air thick with silence. Grayson sat there for a moment, staring at the spot where the boy had stood. "Remarkable child," he murmured. "I think so," she said. "How old is he?" "I didn't say," she replied. "He's 9. He repeated the number slowly. 9. 9 years since he'd ended their marriage. "And his father?" he asked. "Not part of our lives," Evelyn said evenly. "By choice." Grayson nodded, though confusion rippled behind his composed exterior. He rose and walked toward the window, the same one she'd been standing at earlier. "Dr. Hart, have we met before?" he asked suddenly. "You seem familiar." Her heart kicked, but her face stayed calm. "I don't believe so, Mr. Vale. I'd remember meeting the owner of the hospital." "Perhaps," he murmured. "It's strange. Your son's eyes are very distinctive. I feel like I've seen them before." "They run in his father's family," she said quietly. "I see." He turned back, studying her once more, but the pieces hadn't quite aligned. "Thank you for your time, Dr. Hart," he said finally. "I look forward to working with you." As the door shut behind him, Evelyn leaned against her desk, her pulse still racing. He didn't know. Not yet, but the resemblance was undeniable. It was only a matter of time before Boston's most powerful man realized that the son of his hospital's chief of surgery was his own, and when he did, everything would change. The sound of rain against the office windows echoed like soft applause. Dr. Evelyn Hart sat at her desk, pretending to focus on the surgical schedules glowing on her screen. But her mind was nowhere near the charts or patient lists. It was on the man who had walked into her life that morning, the man she'd built her career to forget, Grayson Vale. Even after 9 years, his presence carried the same quiet dominance that had once made her believe he could move mountains with a word. Now he was back, and she was sitting in his hospital, the one that bore his name, holding a position even he had never imagined for her. Fate has an interesting sense of humor, she thought. Her intercom buzzed. "Dr. Hart," Mr. Vale's office called. Her assistant said he'd like to meet again tomorrow at 10 to discuss performance metrics. Evelyn exhaled slowly. "Tell him that will be fine." Her tone was calm, but her heart was not. The next morning, Vale Memorial buzzed with the rhythm of a weekday in full motion. The air smelled of coffee and antiseptic, punctuated by the faint chime of elevator doors. Evelyn walked through the surgical wing, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. Heads turned as she passed, nurses and interns whispering with admiration. To them, she was Dr. Hart, the surgeon who never flinched, never failed. None of them knew that once upon a time, she had been the nurse who was fired for loving the wrong man. When she entered the boardroom, Grayson was already there, tie loosened, jacket draped across the chair beside him. He looked up. Dr. Hart. Mr. Vale. He smiled faintly. I was hoping you'd call me Grayson. I'm not used to formalities when I'm not in a board meeting. I prefer to keep things professional, she replied evenly, taking a seat. Of course, he said, though his tone held the faintest trace of disappointment. For a few moments, silence filled the room except for the sound of rain on glass. Grayson finally spoke. You know, when I took this position, the board couldn't stop talking about you. They said you turned a stagnant department into a national model of efficiency, that you saved this hospital from a reputational collapse. I don't work for recognition, Evelyn said. I work for results. He studied her face. You remind me of someone I used to know. Evelyn's stomach twisted. Is that so? Yes. She was a nurse here years ago. Smart, ambitious, the kind of woman who believed in people more than status. And what happened to her? Evelyn asked, her voice soft but sharp. I ruined her, Grayson admitted quietly. I thought she wasn't good enough for the family name. For the briefest moment, their eyes met, and she saw something she hadn't expected in his. Remorse. By the time she returned to her office, Evelyn's composure was cracking. He didn't know who she was, but he remembered enough to feel the weight of what he'd done. She leaned against the window and stared down at the city below. Boston looked calm from this height, streets weaving like veins beneath a gray sky. If he ever discovered the truth, how would he react? Would he want to take Noah? Claim him like a trophy for the Vale name he once guarded so viciously? No, she couldn't let that happen. Not now. Not when everything she built could collapse in an instant. That evening, when she arrived home, Noah was in the living room, sprawled across the floor with his Lego heart model. He looked up with a grin that erased the day's tension. Mom, I made a new chamber in the ventricle. It pumps faster now. She smiled, kneeling beside him. You're going to be an incredible doctor one day. I want to be like you, he said proudly. You save people every day. Her throat tightened. I tried to. He squinted at her. You look sad. Did something bad happen at work? Evelyn hesitated. No, sweetheart. Just saw someone I didn't expect to see. Someone mean? Once, she said softly. A long time ago. Noah studied her with those sharp gray eyes, the same ones that haunted her every time she looked at him. You should forgive him then. Mrs. Peterson says forgiveness makes your heart lighter. Evelyn smiled faintly. Mrs. Peterson is a very wise woman. I'm wise too, he said, puffing his chest. Yes, you are, she whispered, brushing a hand through his hair. But in her mind, forgiveness wasn't so simple. Not when the man who'd broken her heart was sitting across her desk, pretending she was a stranger. 3 days later, Jennifer buzzed her again. Dr. Hart, Mr. Vale is here to see you. He says it's urgent. Her pulse quickened. Send him in. The door opened, and Grayson stepped in, no longer composed, no longer polished. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his tie hung loose, and his expression was raw. You look like you haven't slept, she said. I haven't, he admitted. I've been thinking about something. Something I can't shake. She crossed her arms. What is it? He hesitated, then took a step closer. Are you Evelyn Mansfield? Her heart stopped cold. For a second, the air in the room seemed to disappear. She forced her face to stay neutral. Excuse me. I went through the old personnel archives, he said, his voice trembling slightly. There was a nurse here 9 years ago, Evelyn Mansfield, terminated without cause. I found a photograph. He swallowed hard. It's you, isn't it? The room was silent, except for the distant hum of hospital machines. Evelyn turned away, walking slowly to the window. Outside, Boston was drenched in a golden sunset, the skyline shimmering against the harbor. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. Hello, Grayson. His breath hitched. "Oh my God," he whispered. "It really is you." He took a step forward, eyes wide with disbelief. "But how? You're a surgeon. You're the chief of surgery. When you fired me for being just a nurse," she finished for him, her voice low. Grayson's expression crumbled. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry. You should be. I was young, arrogant, blind. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I thought status mattered more than love." She turned, eyes sharp with years of restrained pain. "You didn't destroy me, Grayson. You revealed who you really were." He stepped closer, regret etched deep into every word. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But please, let me say it. I'm sorry. For all of it." "Apology noted," she said coolly. "But you didn't come here just to apologize." He hesitated. "No, I came because of your son." Her pulse stilled. "What about him?" Grayson's eyes flickered with a desperate kind of hope. "Is he mine?" The question shattered the air between them. Evelyn's breath caught. She had carried that secret for nearly a decade, hidden it beneath achievements, accolades, and the armor of professionalism. Now it stood between them like a live wire. "Why would you think that?" she asked quietly. "Because he has my eyes," Grayson said hoarsely. "Because he's 9. Because when I look at him, I feel something I can't explain." Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she rested them on the back of her chair. "Do you remember our last conversation, Grayson?" He nodded slowly. "Every word. It haunts me." "Then you remember telling me I wasn't good enough for your name. You remember throwing me out of your house with nothing but a nursing degree and a broken heart." "Yes," he whispered. "I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks later." The color drained from his face. "Pregnant." 3 weeks," she said, each word deliberate. "After you ended our marriage." He staggered back, gripping the chair for balance. "Why didn't you tell me?" Evelyn laughed bitterly. "Tell you? So you could do the right thing? Marry me out of obligation? Raise a child while hiding me from your precious family? I had a right to know." "You had that right when you were my husband," she said coldly. "You lost at the moment you decided I wasn't worthy of being a veil." Grayson stood there, breathing hard. "So he is mine." She met his gaze, calm but merciless. "You have a biological connection to my son. That's all. Evelyn, please, let me see him. Let me know him." She shook her head. "Why? So you could decide he's not good enough either?" "No, because I've already missed 9 years of his life, and I don't want to miss another day." Her expression softened, just slightly. There was pain in his voice she couldn't ignore. "One chance," she said finally. "You can meet him. But if you hurt him in any way, if you make him feel unwanted or ashamed, you'll never see him again." He nodded quickly. "I understand." Evelyn picked up her phone. Her fingers steady despite the storm inside her. "Mrs. Peterson," she said, "could you bring Noah to my office, please? There's someone I'd like him to meet properly." When she looked back at Grayson, his face was pale but filled with something unfamiliar. Hope. The door opened, and the boy with gray eyes stepped in. "Hey, Mom. You needed me?" Evelyn smiled softly. "Yes, sweetheart. There's someone I want you to meet." She turned to Grayson, whose heart was visibly pounding in his chest. "Noah," she said quietly, "this is your father." For a long moment, no one moved. The sound of the hospital clock filled the room, ticking softly above the tension. 9 years of silence, undone by one sentence. Noah blinked, looking from his mother to the man standing beside her. My what?" Evelyn's voice was calm, but her eyes glistened. "Your father, sweetheart." Grayson's breath trembled. He had imagined this moment since the night he realized who Evelyn truly was. But he'd never imagined the fear in his chest. The fear that the boy he'd missed for nearly a decade might look at him like a stranger. Noah frowned, his curiosity rising above confusion. "You're my dad." Grayson nodded slowly. "Yes, I'm your father, and I'm so sorry that I wasn't here sooner." "Why?" The boy asked, direct, unfiltered. "Why weren't you here?" Evelyn looked at Grayson then, giving him permission with her eyes. A silent go on. Grayson knelt down until he was at Noah's level. His voice was steady but heavy with regret. Because I made a lot of bad choices when I was younger. I thought some things mattered more than love. And I was wrong. Noah tilted his head. Like what things? Like what people thought of me, Grayson said. Like my family's opinion, my reputation, money. I thought those things were important. The boy studied him for a long moment, his gray eyes, Grayson's eyes, searching. And they weren't. No, Grayson said softly. None of them were worth losing your mom, or missing you. The boy's small voice came out barely above a whisper. You didn't know about me? Grayson's throat tightened. No, not until now. But I know now, and I'll never forget again. Noah looked down at his sneakers, processing. The weight of adult truth sat uneasily in his young heart. Finally, he glanced at Evelyn. Mom, is it true? She nodded gently. Yes, sweetheart. He didn't know, but he knows now. The room went quiet again, until Noah said something neither of them expected. So what happens now? Evelyn froze. The question was too grown up for a 9-year-old, but Noah had never been a typical child. Grayson exhaled, trying to steady his voice. Now, I hope I get to be part of your life. If you'll let me. The boy studied him, his small face thoughtful. Do you like soccer? Grayson blinked. Soccer? Yeah, 'cause I play midfield, and I score a lot, but only if my dad comes to watch. I think I'll score more. For a moment, the air left the room. Then Grayson smiled, genuinely, for the first time in years. Then I'll be there, every game. You can count on that. Even if it rains? Noah asked, narrowing his eyes with mock suspicion. Especially if it rains. That made the boy grin, wide and bright. Okay, then. Evelyn watched the scene quietly, her heart an orchestra of emotions, relief, fear, nostalgia. She had protected Noah from pain all these years. She had sworn no one would ever make him feel unwanted. Now the man who once shattered her life was kneeling before her son, promising to stay. All right, champ, she said softly. Mrs. Peterson's waiting to take you home. Noah turned to Grayson again. Are you coming too? Grayson looked at Evelyn, unsure. Not tonight, she said, but soon. Okay, the boy said with a little shrug. Bye, Dad. The word hit Grayson like a jolt of electricity. Dad. He swallowed hard, trying to speak, but the sound that came out was barely a whisper. Bye, son. When the door closed behind Noah, silence fell again. Grayson stood, turning to face Evelyn. He called me Dad. Yes, she said quietly. He did. His voice cracked. I missed 9 years. 9 years I can never get back. Evelyn folded her arms, her tone soft but firm. You made your choices, Grayson. You'll have to live with them. I know, he said, but I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want the chance to be there for him now, to be the father I wasn't allowed to be. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You were allowed, Grayson. You just didn't choose to be. He looked down, ashamed. You're right. She hesitated, watching him. Something in his voice, broken yet sincere, stirred a flicker of the old warmth inside her, the one she buried beneath years of ambition and independence. You really want to be in his life? She asked. Yes, more than anything. Then prove it. He met her eyes, confusion and hope swirling together. How? Show up, she said simply. Every time you say you will. Be the man he believes you are, not the man you were 9 years ago. He nodded slowly. I can do that. Evelyn sighed and sank into her chair. You'll have to deal with your family, too. The Vallas won't exactly welcome this. Grayson's expression hardened. They don't get to decide who's in my life anymore. She arched an eyebrow. They did before. Not again. He said it quietly, but there was conviction in his voice. The kind that made Evelyn look at him, really look at him, for the first time in years. Maybe, she thought, people can change. But she wasn't ready to believe it yet. 2 weeks later, the sky over Boston was painted in shades of rose and blue. Evelyn stood at the sidelines of the school soccer field, arms crossed against the chill breeze. Parents gathered in small clusters, cheering as children darted across the field. Beside her, Grayson arrived, out of breath but smiling. "Did I miss it?" She smirked. "Kickoff was 2 minutes ago. You're safe." Noah spotted him instantly, waving from midfield. "Dad, you came." Grayson lifted a hand, his grin genuine. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Evelyn couldn't help it. She smiled too. It had been a long time since she'd seen that light in his face. Throughout the game, he cheered louder than anyone, completely unbothered by the rain that began to fall halfway through. When Noah scored, Grayson shouted, "That's my boy," with the kind of joy that made every parent turn and smile. Afterward, Noah ran to the sidelines, his cleats splashing through puddles, and jumped into Grayson's arms. "Did you see that goal?" "I saw every second," Grayson said, spinning him once before setting him down. "You were amazing." Evelyn watched them, torn between pride and a strange ache. For years, it had been just her and Noah, two halves of a world she'd built from scratch. Now there was another heartbeat in the rhythm of their lives, one that didn't quite fit yet, but didn't feel wrong either. As they walked to the parking lot, Noah ran ahead to the car. Grayson turned to Evelyn. "Thank you for letting me come." "He wanted you here," she said, "and I won't punish him for what happened between us." He hesitated. "And between us?" Evelyn shook her head. "Don't read into this, Grayson. I'm not that young nurse who believed love could fix everything." He nodded slowly, accepting the blow. "I know, but maybe this time love doesn't have to fix everything. Maybe it can just start over." Her eyes met his, a flash of old fire, tempered by 9 years of scars. "Don't make promises you can't keep," she warned. "I'm not promising," he said quietly. "I'm proving." And as he walked his car in the misting rain, Evelyn stood still, watching him disappear into the glow of the parking lot lights. For the first time since he'd returned, she didn't feel anger, just uncertainty, and a question that refused to leave her mind. What if this time he meant it? The Vale family mansion sat on a hill overlooking the Charles River, a glass and marble monument to wealth and control. Inside, beneath the glimmer of crystal chandeliers, Grayson Vale stood in the study, pacing. He hadn't planned to tell his family about Noah this soon, but secrets in the Vale household had a way of surfacing faster than truth. His mother, Margaret Vale, sat by the fireplace, her posture impeccable, her voice calm and sharp as ice. "You're telling me," she said, "that the chief of surgery at our hospital, the same woman you once fired, has been raising your son in secret for 9 years?" Grayson clenched his jaw. Not in secret. She was protecting him. Protecting him from what? Margaret's tone was cutting. From his own name? From the life he should have had? From this, Grayson snapped. From the judgment. From this cold house and everything it stands for. His father, Richard Vale, looked up from his whiskey glass. "You should have had this conversation with us before making it public." "I haven't made it public," Grayson said. "I told you because you're my family." "Then listen to your family," Richard said evenly. "This woman humiliated you once. Do not let her do it again." Grayson's temper flickered. "She didn't humiliate me. I did that to myself." His mother's lips thinned. "You're acting emotional. You always have when it comes to that woman." "Because she was the only one who ever saw me for more than this family's name," he said. Richard sighed, setting his glass down. "You're the chairman of Vale Medical, Grayson. The name is what keeps this empire standing. You can't throw it away over guilt and sentiment." Grayson met his father's gaze, steady and unwavering. "Then maybe it's time I stopped serving the name and started serving what was meant to stand for saving lives, not buying reputations." Margaret stood, her voice calm but lethal. "If you bring that woman and her son into our lives, the board will turn against you. Our partners will question your judgment. You'll risk everything your father built." "I'm not risking it," Grayson said. "I'm reclaiming it." He turned toward the door before either of them could speak again. "Grayson," his mother called after him, "if you walk out that door, you're choosing them over us." He paused. His reflection stared back at him in the mirror. The obedient son, the heir, the man he no longer wanted to be. "I guess I am," he said and left. Later that evening, rain tapped gently against the window of Evelyn's apartment. She sat on the couch, reviewing surgery reports on her tablet, when a knock sounded at the door. When she opened it, Grayson stood there, drenched, exhausted, but resolute. "You're soaked," she said. "I walked," he replied simply. She frowned. "From where?" "The family mansion." Evelyn's stomach sank. "They know." He nodded. "They do. And they're furious," he said, his tone soft but steady. "They think I've lost my mind. They want to end things with you. Pretend Noah doesn't exist." Evelyn's eyes hardened. "Of course they do. I told them I won't." For a second, she said nothing. Then, quietly, "You stood up to them?" "I did." She folded her arms. "That's new. I'm not the same man I was 9 years ago, Evelyn." She studied him, her expression unreadable. "Maybe, or maybe you're just saying that because you feel guilty." "I do feel guilty," he said, "but that's not why I'm here." "Then why are you here?" He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Because I'm done letting other people decide who I love, who I protect, or who I show up for. I'm here because you and Noah deserve better than a coward hiding behind his family's name." Evelyn looked away, her throat tight. "Don't make this about redemption, Grayson. This isn't a movie where the man says sorry and everything goes back to perfect." He smiled faintly. "I know. That's why I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for real." She exhaled, shaking her head. "You can't just walk back into our lives and expect everything to heal overnight. I don't expect that. I expect it to take time. I expect it to hurt. I just don't want to give up before trying." There was something different in his tone. Stripped of ego, stripped of the entitlement she used to despise. He wasn't commanding her to forgive him. He was asking to earn it. And that terrified her more than the arrogance ever had. The next morning, Vale Memorial buzzed with whispers. Someone from the board had leaked the story. Grayson Vale has a secret son with Dr. Evelyn Hart. By noon, the news had spread through every corridor, every department. Doctors whispered in elevators. Nurses exchanged glances. Reporters circled outside the hospital. Evelyn's office phone wouldn't stop ringing. She was on the verge of turning it off when Jennifer burst in. "Dr. Hart," she said breathlessly. "Channel 5 is running a story. They're calling it The Heir and the Surgeon." Evelyn closed her eyes. "Of course they are." Then another voice came from the doorway, deep, controlled. "Let them talk." Grayson stood there, crisp suit, tie straightened, eyes calm. The storm had arrived, and somehow he looked ready to face it. "You should be in the boardroom," she said. "I was," he replied. "They wanted me to issue a statement denying everything. And I refused." Evelyn blinked. "You what?" "I told them the truth. That you're the most brilliant surgeon this hospital has ever had. That I was a fool for not standing beside you 9 years ago. And that Noah is my son." Her breath caught. "You told the world?" He nodded. "Yes. No more hiding." Evelyn stood slowly, her voice trembling. "Do you have any idea what that will do to your career?" "I know exactly what it'll do," he said. "It'll set me free." She stared at him, speechless. The man she'd once known, who'd valued status over love, image over truth, was standing there, burning the very image he'd once worshipped. The silence stretched until he spoke again, quieter this time. "I spent 9 years living in guilt and silence, Evelyn. I won't spend another minute pretending I'm not proud of the family I have." And for the first time, Evelyn felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. Before she could respond, Jennifer rushed back in. "Dr. Hart, Mr. Vale, there's someone demanding to see you in the lobby. Reporters aren't allowed past security, but this one says she's family." Evelyn frowned. "Who?" Jennifer hesitated. "A Mrs. Margaret Vale." Grayson's face went pale. "My mother—" Evelyn sighed. "Of course." The hospital lobby was chaos. Cameras flashed outside the glass doors, and patients whispered from the waiting benches as Margaret Vale strode in, immaculate, unbothered, and armed with disapproval. "Grayson," she said sharply. "We need to talk. Privately." He straightened his shoulders. "No, Mother, we're doing this right here." Her gaze shifted to Evelyn. "You think you can shame this family into accepting you again? Into pretending that mistake of yours belongs in the Vale bloodline?" Evelyn didn't flinch. "No, I don't need your name. I've built my own." Margaret's lips tightened. "You always were insolent, and you always underestimated me," Evelyn replied evenly. Before Margaret could respond, a small voice spoke from behind them. "Grandma?" They all turned. Noah stood at the hallway entrance, clutching his backpack, confusion and curiosity written across his face. Margaret froze. He had the Vale eyes, her son's eyes, her husband's eyes. The resemblance was undeniable. Grayson knelt beside his son. "It's okay, buddy. This is your grandmother." Noah tilted his head, polite but uncertain. "Hi." Margaret opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in decades, the formidable matriarch had nothing to say. Noah smiled shyly. "Mom says family means the people who don't walk away. Are you one of those people?" The question pierced the silence like light through stained glass. Margaret blinked, her perfect composure faltering. I suppose I should be." Grayson looked at her, almost astonished. Evelyn placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you to school." As they walked away, Margaret turned to Grayson, her voice low. "He's remarkable." "He's ours," Grayson said softly. "All three of us." And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel ashamed of it. By morning, the city had turned their story into a headline. Heir of Vale Medical claims love child with chief surgeon. Hospital empire shaken by secret relationship. Every newsstand, every blog, every whispered conversation inside the hospital carried the same electricity, a mixture of curiosity, scandal, and disbelief. The Vale name had always stood for untouchable power. Now it stood for something dangerously human. In the boardroom of Vale Memorial, the tension was palpable. Executives sat around the table, murmuring in low voices as Grayson entered. His presence silenced the room. At the head of the table, Chairman Richard Vale, his father, cleared his throat. "We're convening this emergency session to address the reputational crisis surrounding the Vale name." "It's not a crisis," Grayson said calmly, taking a seat. "It's the truth." A board member, Dr. Collins, leaned forward. "With respect, sir, the truth is bad for business. Investors are already calling. The press coverage is out of control." Another added, "Our patients need stability, not family drama." Grayson folded his hands, unmoved. "What they need is trust that this hospital values honesty over image." Richard's jaw tightened. "You've always had a talent for idealism, son, but you're forgetting what keeps this place alive: reputation." Grayson met his father's gaze evenly. "And I'm tired of worshiping it." The room went still. Richard sighed, his tone heavy. "If you won't issue a retraction, then we need another gesture of accountability." "What kind of gesture?" Grayson asked. One of the board members adjusted his glasses. "The chief of surgery should step down, temporarily at least, until the media calms." Grayson froze. "You're asking me to remove Dr. Hart?" "It's not personal," Collins said. "It's optics." Grayson's hands tightened into fists. "You're suggesting I punish the woman you all celebrated 6 months ago, the one who saved this hospital surgical department, because of my past mistake?" "Because of public image," Richard corrected. "Our donors don't care about context. They care about headlines." Grayson's voice rose, quiet but edged with fury. "So you wanted to clean your image with her career?" No one answered. "Then let me be clear," he said, standing. "If you move against Dr. Hart, I walk. And when I walk, I take the Vale name with me." The room erupted into whispers. Richard's voice was cold. "Don't test me, son." "I'm not testing you," Grayson said. "I'm done being your pawn." And with that, he left the room. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat in her office, surrounded by the quiet hum of machines. She'd seen the headlines. She'd heard the whispers. But nothing stung more than the email that had just landed in her inbox. Subject: request for a temporary resignation, board decision pending. She read it twice, her heart tightening. A knock at the door. Grayson stepped in, his face tense. "They're coming for your position." "I know," she said softly. "I just got the email." He walked closer, fury in his voice. "I told them no. I told them I'd resign before I let them take you down." Evelyn looked up sharply. "You can't." "I can, and I will." "You'll destroy everything you've worked for," she said. "The board will replace you. You'll lose control of your father's empire." He smiled faintly. "Maybe it's time someone did." She shook her head, standing. "Grayson, listen to me. This isn't about pride. This is about survival. You can't throw away your legacy for me." "I'm not doing for you," he said quietly. "I'm doing for what's right." Her voice softened. "You always say that right before you make the hardest mistake of your life." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Maybe, but the difference is this time I know what matters." They stood inches apart, the silence between them thick with history, anger, pain, love that refused to die. "You once told me I wasn't good enough to stand beside you," she said. "Now you're willing to burn down your world for me." He met her eyes. "Because I finally learned what being good enough really means." That afternoon, Evelyn was called to the auditorium for a special board announcement. Whispers followed her down the hall. The atmosphere was electric, the kind of charged quiet before a storm. The room was packed, staff, doctors, even media representatives. At the podium stood Grayson Vale. Evelyn froze in the back row. She hadn't approved any press conference. He began to speak, his voice steady, calm, but carrying a depth that made every head turn. Vale Memorial was built on a foundation of excellence. But somewhere along the way, we confused excellence with appearance. We thought our worth came from reputation, not results, from prestige, not people. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He continued, 9 years ago, I made a mistake that cost me the love of an incredible woman, and 9 years of knowing my own son. I let pride blind me, and for that, I take full responsibility." Every word echoed across the hall. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned forward. "I will not allow the woman who rebuilt this hospital to take the fall for my past. Dr. Evelyn Hart is not stepping down. Instead," he took a breath, "I am." A collective gasp filled the room. Evelyn's heart stopped. Grayson went on, voice unwavering. "Effective immediately, I'm resigning as chairman of Vale Medical Group. My role will be assumed by an interim board until a new leader is appointed. I'll continue as consultant, unpaid, to ensure a smooth transition." The room erupted in noise, shock, applause, disbelief. Richard Vale stood abruptly in the audience, his face pale with fury. "Grayson." But Grayson didn't look at him. He looked at Evelyn. "For too long," he said, "I let this name control me. Today, I choose something greater: truth, accountability, and the people who make this place worth leading." And with that, he stepped away from the microphone. Evelyn stood frozen, the world spinning around her. When the crowd finally began to disperse, she walked to the stage. "You're insane," she whispered when she reached him. He smiled softly. "Maybe, but free. You just gave up everything." "No," he said, looking at her. "I just gave up everything that wasn't real." Evelyn's eyes burned. "You didn't have to do that for me." "I didn't do it for you," he said. "I did it because of you. Because watching you stand up for what you believe in reminded me what integrity looks like." Tears filled her eyes, not of weakness, but of disbelief. For years, she'd imagined this moment, not him saving her, but him understanding her. She turned away before the emotion could break through. "Go home, Grayson, before your father tears down the building." He chuckled softly. "He'll try, but this time I won't let him." As he left the stage, flashes from the cameras painted him in white light. A man walking away from an empire, towards something he didn't yet fully understand but knew he needed. Evelyn stood there long after he was gone, staring at the podium, the echo of his words still lingering. Maybe it wasn't about forgiveness anymore. Maybe it was about freedom, for both of them. That night, she sat with Noah on the couch. He was half asleep, his head on her shoulder, the TV flickering with reruns of the same press conference. "Mom," he murmured. "Yes, sweetheart." "Why did Dad quit his job?" She brushed a hand through his hair. "Because sometimes doing the right thing means walking away from what everyone else wants." He smiled sleepily. "Then I think he's brave." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Yeah," she whispered. "Maybe he finally is." Boston was different without the weight of his last name attached to everything he did. For the first time in his life, Grayson Vale woke up without a calendar dictated by board meetings, investors, or family expectations. His resignation had made national news. The Valles called it disgraceful. The public called it heroic. He called it freedom. Still, freedom had its price. He'd lost a mansion, the corner office, the fleet of black sedans waiting at the curb. He lived now in a modest brownstone apartment in Cambridge, where the air smelled of rain and coffee instead of perfume and politics. And yet, as he sat by the window one early morning, watching the sunrise wash the city gold, he realized he didn't miss any of it. He missed one thing only. Them, Evelyn, Noah, the sound of laughter in a home that had never known it before. He wasn't naive enough to think he could just walk back into their lives and fit. But he was patient now. For once, he was willing to earn what he wanted. At Vale Memorial Hospital, however, patience was a luxury Evelyn couldn't afford. The board had accepted Grayson's resignation, and with it, all the old power dynamics came roaring back. Some colleagues congratulated her on surviving the scandal. Others treated her like a walking controversy. Every smile had a question behind it. Every compliment carried the weight of gossip. In the cafeteria, she overheard whispers. "Do you think she really earned that position?" "She slept with the boss." Of course she did. Apparently, he gave it all up for her. Evelyn kept her back straight and her voice steady through it all. But when she got home each night, exhaustion pressed down like a stone. Noah would chatter about school and soccer, his innocent joy the only thing that kept her centered. And sometimes, late at night, she'd get a text. "Grayson, how's Noah doing with his science fair project?" Evelyn, excited. "He's building a model heart that actually pumps water." Grayson, like his mom, always saving lives. She would smile despite herself, then sigh and lock the screen. Weeks passed. One afternoon, during her rounds, Evelyn found herself in the children's ward, a place she'd avoided since her promotion. The laughter, the courage of those tiny patients. It humbled her. It reminded her why she'd chosen this path in the first place. Then, at the far end of the corridor, she saw him. Grayson stood beside a young leukemia patient's bed, reading aloud from a storybook. The little boy giggled as Grayson made funny voices for each character. Evelyn froze. When he noticed her, he closed the book gently and smiled. "Hey, what are you doing here?" she asked softly, stepping closer. "Volunteering," he said simply. "Figure if I can't run the hospital, I can at least do something that matters." Her heart squeezed. "You don't have to prove anything to me." He smiled faintly. "I'm not doing it for you. Though I'm not going to lie, it's nice when you see it." Evelyn crossed her arms, trying not to smile. "You really think you can charm your way back into my life, don't you?" "I don't want to charm you," he said quietly. "I want to deserve you." The honesty in his tone stopped her. She looked at him for a long moment, then down at the child now dozing peacefully in bed. "Keep reading to him," she murmured. "He sleeps better that way." When she turned to leave, he said softly, "Evelyn." She looked back. "Thank you for not stopping me from trying." She didn't answer, but she didn't stop him either. 2 weeks later, Noah's science fair filled the school gym with color and noise. Tables lined the floor, volcanoes erupted foam, light bulbs flickered, models spun. And at the far corner stood Noah's project, a human heart made of plastic tubing and red-tinted water, beating softly with the pulse of a small pump. Evelyn knelt beside him. "You did an amazing job, sweetheart." Noah grinned. "Thanks. But Dad helped with the circuit. He said it's like the pacemaker, the model." Her eyes lifted. Grayson stood a few feet away, helping another parent adjust a display board. He caught her gaze and smiled softly. Later, when Noah ran off with his friends, Grayson approached. "He's incredible," Grayson said quietly. "Every part of him." "I know," she replied. "He's everything." Grayson looked at her for a long moment. "You did that. Alone." "I had no choice." He nodded slowly. "Maybe not, but you did it beautifully." She hesitated, her tone cautious. "Grayson, you can't keep showing up like this and pretending we're—" "Pretending?" he interrupted gently. "Evelyn, I don't know what we are right now. I just know I don't want to disappear again." Her eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "You can't keep walking into my life without warning." He smiled faintly. "Then give me permission to knock first." She tried to suppress a laugh, failed, then shook her head. "You're impossible." "I used to be insufferable. Impossible is progress." For the first time in years, Evelyn laughed. A sound light and real, one she hadn't heard from herself since before Noah was born. That night, after the fair, she found herself thinking of him. Not the Grayson who'd broken her, but the one who'd shown up again and again, quietly, steadily, without demands. The one who'd read stories to sick children instead of chasing power. The one who looked at Noah like he was a miracle instead of a burden. And she wondered, maybe people could change. Her phone buzzed. "Grayson, you free this weekend? There's a volunteer event at the harbor, charity health clinic for low-income families. I thought you might like to join." "Evelyn, you volunteering again?" "Grayson, trying to make up for lost time." "Evelyn, you'll get tired eventually." "Grayson, not of this. Not of you." She stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Evelyn, Saturday, 10 a.m., don't be late." "Grayson, I wouldn't dare." Saturday morning came bright and cold. The harbor was alive with volunteers. Doctors setting up mobile tents, nurses organizing supplies, patients already lining up. Grayson was there early, rolling up his sleeves, helping unload equipment. When Evelyn arrived, clipboard in hand, their eyes met across the crowd. He smiled, but didn't approach her immediately. He let her work, let her lead, and she noticed he wasn't here to impress her. He was just here. Hours later, as the clinic wound down, Evelyn found him sitting by the pier, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You still think you're not trying to prove something?" she teased. He chuckled. "Maybe just trying to prove to myself I can be useful without owning the room." She sat beside him, the sea breeze lifting strands of her hair. For a long time they said nothing. The sound of gulls and waves filled the silence between them. Finally, Evelyn spoke. "You know what the hardest part of all this has been?" "What?" "Not hating you." He looked at her, startled. "I tried," she said quietly. "For years I tried to hate you. But every time Noah smiled, I saw you in him. And I couldn't." Grayson's voice was soft. "That's more mercy than I deserve." "It's not mercy," she said. "It's truth. You hurt me, Grayson, but you also gave me the best part of my life." He swallowed hard. "Evelyn." She stood, brushing sand from her coat. "Don't say anything. Not yet. Just keep showing up." And before he could respond, she walked away, her figure framed against the sunlight, strong, graceful, untouchable. Grayson sat there for a while, watching the tide roll in, his heart heavy but full. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of the wait. Because she hadn't said no. She'd said not yet. Hospitals are like living organisms, veins of corridors, beating hearts of patients, and the quiet pulse of politics running beneath the surface. For weeks, Dr. Evelyn Hart felt that pulse turn against her. It began with whispers, then missing reports, then mistakes that weren't mistakes at all. A file misplaced here, a surgery schedule altered there, and all of it led back to one person, Dr. Nathaniel Pierce, the head of internal medicine and one of the board's oldest allies. Nathaniel had always resented her rapid rise, and now that she was tied to Graysonvale, she'd become an easy target. One Monday morning, she found herself summoned to the hospital's legal office. The administrator, Helen Frost, was waiting with a folder on the desk. "Dr. Hart," she said stiffly, We received an anonymous complaint regarding a post-op complication last week, the heart bypass for patient Everett Jameson. Evelyn frowned. That surgery was successful. The patient's recovering. Helen slid a document across the table. The report says otherwise. Evelyn scanned paper, her eyes narrowing. Someone had rewritten her surgical notes, made it look like she'd ignored a critical warning in the patient's vitals. "This isn't my handwriting," she said sharply. Helen sighed. "I believe you, but the board will need to review it. You'll be placed on temporary suspension until the investigation concludes." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "Suspension? You can't." "It's protocol," Helen said. "You know that." Evelyn stood, gripping the edge of the table. "This is political. Someone's setting me up." Helen didn't meet her eyes. "Then prove it." By afternoon, the news had spread. Dr. Evelyn Hart, under internal review. Vail Memorial's youngest chief of surgery, suspended pending investigation. The same media that had once called her a symbol of resilience now called her controversial. Evelyn walked through the hospital halls, head high, ignoring the stares. But when she reached the exit, Grayson was waiting, leaning against the wall, phone in hand. "I heard," he said quietly. "Of course you did," she muttered. He fell into step beside her as she pushed through the doors into the parking lot. "Evelyn, tell me what happened." "Someone falsified a report," she said, her voice trembling with restrained anger. "They're trying to destroy me, to prove I don't belong here." "Pierce," Grayson said flatly. Her silence was answer enough. He clenched his fists. "I should have known they'd come for you next. I'll talk to the board." "You can't," she said sharply. "You don't work there anymore." "That doesn't mean I can't protect you." "Grayson, if you get involved, they'll call it interference. They'll make it worse." He stepped closer, his voice low. "I don't care what they call it. I'm not standing by while they tear down everything you built." Evelyn's eyes flashed. "You can't save me every time something happens. That's not how this works." He looked at her, hurt. "This isn't about saving you. It's about standing beside you." The anger in her chest cracked just slightly. For years, she'd stood alone, in surgery, in motherhood, in life. And now, here he was finally showing up when she needed him most. "Then stand beside me quietly," she said. "Let me fight this my way." He nodded, though his jaw tightened. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Don't let them convince you that you don't belong. You built that hospital as much as my name ever did." That night, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, files spread out before her. Noah was asleep, his school books open beside him, his hand still gripping a pencil. She smiled faintly, then went back to the records, cross-checking patient vitals, timestamps, and staff logs. Something didn't add up. The altered entry had been logged from her credentials at 3:14 a.m., a time when she'd been home with Noah asleep. Her stomach turned. Someone used her access ID. Before she could think, she grabbed her phone and called Grayson. He answered instantly. "Evelyn." "I found something," she said breathlessly. "The falsified report, it was logged in under my account, but at 3:14 a.m. I wasn't even in the building." "Security cameras," he said. "They archive footage for 30 days. If we can pull the video from that night, we can prove it wasn't me," she finished. "Meet me there in 30 minutes, he said. By midnight, Vail Memorial's corridors were silent, save for the hum of machinery and the soft echo of their footsteps. Grayson swiped his old ID card. The system still hadn't revoked his consultant access, and the door to the security room clicked open. He turned to her. "You sure about this?" Evelyn nodded. Completely, together, they pulled up the security feed from the night in question. The screen flickered, and there it was. At 3:14 a.m., someone entered her office. A tall man, wearing surgical scrubs and gloves. He moved quickly, purposefully. Evelyn's breath caught. "Pause it. Zoom in." Grayson leaned closer. The frame sharpened, and there it was, the faint glint of a name badge. Dr. Nathaniel Pierce. Grayson exhaled sharply. He didn't even bother to hide it. Evelyn stared at the screen, fury and relief colliding. We have him. Send it to yourself, he said. Make copies. I'll handle the rest. Evelyn turned to him. Grayson, don't. I'm not interfering, he said. I'm informing. There's a difference. The next morning, the boardroom was filled again, this time not with whispers, but with evidence. Evelyn sat one end of the table, calm and composed. Across from her, Nathaniel Pierce tried to maintain his smug confidence. Richard Vail was there, arms crossed, while Helen Frost presented the findings. Security footage confirms that Dr. Pierce accessed Dr. Hart's office after hours, using unauthorized credentials, Helen said. He then edited and replaced the patient report under her name. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Pierce's voice trembled. This is absurd. Helen cut him off. The footage is time-stamped and verified. Your login credentials match the terminal used. We have enough to terminate your employment effective immediately. Silence. Evelyn's hands stayed folded in her lap. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She just breathed. Grayson sat quietly behind her, watching the man who tried to destroy her unravel. Richard Vail finally spoke. Dr. Hart, on behalf of the board, we apologize. Vail Memorial owes you an enormous debt. Evelyn nodded. Thank you. But what I want is an apology. Richard frowned. Then what? A system, she said simply. Better oversight. Better accountability. No one should ever have the power to falsify records again. The room went still. Then, slowly, people began to nod. Richard studied her. This woman his son had nearly lost everything for. And for the first time, he saw what his son must have seen years ago. Strength, integrity, fire. When the meeting ended, Grayson caught up to her in the corridor. You handled that like a general, he said. She smiled faintly. I've had enough battles to learn when to swing and when to stand still. He hesitated, then said softly, I'm proud of you. Evelyn turned, her voice gentler now. You should be proud of yourself, too. You didn't try to take control this time. He grinned. That's progress, right? She nodded. That's progress. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Two people who'd spent nearly a decade breaking and rebuilding everything between them. Coffee, he asked. She smiled. Only if you're buying. He chuckled. You always did like making me work for things. Evelyn's gaze softened. That's because the things worth having always take work. That night, as they sat in a quiet cafe overlooking the city, the chaos finally behind them, Grayson reached across the table. Evelyn hesitated, then let his hand find hers. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a clean slate, but it was something real. And as the city lights reflected off the harbor, Evelyn Hart realized that the life she'd once lost had come back. Not as it was, but as it was meant to be. Boston's autumn came in soft this year, leaves drifting down like slow applause, the air tinged with salt from the harbor and warm from the street cafes. It was the kind of season that whispered forgive yourself. For Evelyn Hart, forgiveness was something she'd learned to live without. But now, in the quiet after chaos, it began to feel like something she could reach again, not from others, but from herself. Her suspension had been lifted, her name cleared, her leadership reaffirmed. Yet, walking back into Vail Memorial, that first morning felt strange. People looked at her differently now, not with gossip or pity, but with respect. The whispers had stopped. The silence was acknowledgement. And at the far end of the hall, waiting near the coffee station with 2 cups in hand, stood Grayson Vail. You're early, she said, approaching him with a small smile. I didn't want to risk you beating me here, he replied, handing her a cup. Still 2 sugars, right? Her eyebrow arched. You remember? I remember everything, he said softly. For a moment, they stood there, the sound of the hospital's morning bustle around them, monitors beeping, voices calling orders, the world carrying on. It felt oddly peaceful. You look happier, he said finally. I feel lighter, she admitted, for the first time in a long time. That's good, he said. You deserve that. That weekend, Evelyn found herself at the soccer field again. Noah ran across the pitch, his cleats flashing, his laughter cutting to the chilly air. She sat on the bleachers with her thermos, bundled in her scarf, watching him chase the ball like it was the only thing that mattered. Then out of the corner of her eye, she saw Grayson, walking up with 2 hot chocolates and a grin. "He's getting fast," Grayson said, sitting beside her. "He practices every morning before school," she replied. "Says he wants to make the national youth team someday." "He will," Grayson said, without hesitation. "He's got your drive." Evelyn smiled. "And your stubbornness." They both laughed. It wasn't the tense laughter of 2 people forcing small talk. It was real, easy. For the first time since his return, their silence wasn't heavy. Noah scored a goal, turned to look at them in the stands. And when he saw them both cheering side by side, his face lit up brighter than the sun. "He's happy," Grayson murmured. "Yes," she said softly. "He is." Later that afternoon, the 3 of them went for ice cream, something Noah declared mandatory after scoring. They sat by the harbor wall, legs swinging, cones in hand. Noah chattered nonstop about school, about a friend named Ben who wanted to be an astronaut, about his science teacher who called him Document. Evelyn listened, smiling. Grayson just watched, memorizing every word, every laugh, every piece of the life he'd missed. When Noah ran off to chase a seagull, Grayson turned to Evelyn. "He's amazing." She nodded. "He's my whole world." "He's our world," Grayson said quietly. Her heart skipped a beat. "I know I can't make up for the years I lost," he continued, "but I can make the ones ahead count. If you'll let me." Evelyn didn't look at him, just at the horizon where the sun melted into the sea. "I'm not ready to rebuild what we had, Grayson. Not yet." "I know, but," she said softly, "I'm not shutting the door anymore either." That made him smile, not with relief, but with something gentler. Gratitude. "That's enough for me," he said. "For now." Over the next few months, something steady began to form between them. Something almost fragile in its simplicity. Grayson volunteered twice a week at the hospital's outreach clinic. Evelyn focused on rebuilding her department, mentoring new surgeons, reforming the system she'd nearly been destroyed by. And Noah, their bridge, their heartbeat, became the glue between 2 lives learning to breathe together again. Sometimes they'd all have dinner together. Sometimes just the 2 of them would meet for coffee, talking about work, life, mistakes, and the future like old friends rediscovering a language they'd once spoken fluently. And one evening, as the first snow began to fall, Grayson walked her home after a long shift. They stopped at her doorstep. "Do you ever think about what it would have been like if things had gone differently?" he asked quietly. "All the time," she said. "But then I think maybe we needed a break first to learn how to rebuild." He smiled faintly. "You always were the wiser one." "Not wiser," she said. "Just older in my pain." He looked at her then, eyes soft, voice almost a whisper. "I don't want to rush you, Evelyn. But when you're ready, I'll be here. Not as a veil, not as a man trying to fix things. Just as me." She held his gaze for a long, silent moment. Then she said, "Walk me to work tomorrow." He blinked. "That's it? No speech?" No hesitation. She smiled. "That is the speech." A week later, the hospital staff watched something they'd never seen before. Evelyn Hart walking to the corridor beside Grayson Vale, laughing quietly, shoulders brushing, eyes bright. No announcement, no grand gesture. Just 2 people who had once been broken, now learning how to be whole again. Rumors whispered again, but this time they sounded different. Respectful, curious, hopeful. Even Richard and Margaret Vale, watching from afar, couldn't deny what they saw. Their son wasn't defying the family anymore. He was finally defining himself. That evening, Evelyn sat at home while Noah worked on his homework. The living room glowed with soft lamplight, jazz humming quietly from radio. "Mom," Noah said suddenly, "do you think people can change?" She looked up from her paperwork. "Yes, I do." "How?" "By deciding to," she said simply, then showing it one day at a time. He smiled thoughtfully. "I think Dad's doing that." Her heart softened. "Yeah, I think he is too." Then he added, without looking up from his notebook, "You're changing too. You smile more." That made her laugh. "Do I?" "Yeah," he said, "like you used in old pictures." Evelyn paused, then glanced at the photo on the shelf, her and Noah on his 3rd birthday, frosting on their cheeks, joy in their eyes. And for the first time in years, she felt like that woman again. Not the one who'd been broken, the one who had learned how to live after. Later that night, her phone buzzed. "Grayson, you awake?" "Evelyn, unfortunately, yes. Paperwork never sleeps." "Grayson, want to trade paperwork for hot chocolate and a walk?" "Evelyn, you never stop trying, do you?" "Grayson, not with you." She hesitated, smiling softly. "Evelyn, 15 minutes. And bring extra marshmallows." "Grayson, on my way." As she reached for her coat, Noah sleepily poked his head from his room. "Going out, Mom?" "Just for a walk," she said softly. "Get some air." He grinned. "Tell Dad I said hi." She froze for a second, then smiled. "I will." Outside, snow drifted to the quiet streets, glowing orange under the lamplight. Grayson was waiting at the corner, 2 steaming cups in hand. "Extra marshmallows," he said, offering one. Evelyn took it, her eyes meeting his. "You remembered." "I always do." They walked in silence, the world muffled by snow, their footsteps soft and unhurried. For once, there was no past pressing against them, only the present. And as they crossed the bridge overlooking the frozen harbor, Evelyn slipped her gloved hand into his. Grayson looked down, startled, then smiled, not with victory, but with peace, because finally they weren't walking apart. They were walking home. Spring returned to Boston the way forgiveness does, slowly, softly, and without asking permission. The harbor ice melted first, then the air shifted. Cafe doors opened again. The hospital windows gleamed with new light. And in one of those windows, Dr. Evelyn Hart stood looking out, her reflection framed by the skyline. The last 9 years had taken everything from her once, and then, little by little, had given it all back. Below, a new sign was being fastened to the wall of Vale Memorial Hospital. Hart Cardiothoracic Center, founded 2025. She exhaled, smiling faintly. Behind her, footsteps. "You're going to ruin your eyes staring at that sign," came Grayson's voice. Evelyn turned. He leaned in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, a clipboard under his arm. "Still perfectionist?" she teased. "Still hopelessly in love with one," he replied. She shook her head, but her smile betrayed her. "You can't flirt your way into a management role." "I don't need to," he said. "I already have one." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh." He handed her the clipboard. Inside were documents stamped with the city's emblem. Vale Foundation, Community Health Initiative Partnership with Heart Center. Her eyes lifted. "You started again." He nodded. "Not the empire, not the brand. Just a good part. Free clinics, funding for student nurses, equipment for rural hospitals." Evelyn's gaze softened. "Grayson." He smiled. "Turns out I'm better at building things that help people than things that impress them." That evening, they attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The press was there, but this time the flashes felt celebratory, not predatory. Evelyn gave a short speech. Clear, humble, steady. "This center isn't just mine," she said. "It belongs to every nurse who was told they weren't enough, every doctor who fought to be heard, and every patient who walked out of here with a second chance." When she finished, applause filled the courtyard. Grayson watched from the front row, pride glowing behind his eyes. Noah, now in his school blazer, clapped the loudest. He ran up as soon as the ribbon dropped. "Mom, they said your name on TV." Evelyn laughed. "They did, didn't they?" Noah looked up at Grayson. "Did you help too, Dad?" Grayson crouched. "A little. Mostly your mom." "No," Noah said firmly. "You both did. Together." The word together hung between them, small, simple, and true. Weeks later, on a rare free Sunday, they drove north to the Cape. The sea was calm, dotted with sailboats. Gulls traced the wind like white commas across a blue sentence. Noah built sandcastles while Evelyn and Grayson walked the shoreline. "You know," she said, kicking at the surf, "when I first met you, I thought you were impossible." "I was," he admitted. She smiled. "And now you're mostly impossible. I'll take that as progress." They walked in silence for a while, the ocean hissing softly at their feet. Then Grayson said, "I was offered a position, Dean of Administration, at Boston General." Evelyn stopped. "That's big." He nodded. "They want me to help reform funding. Make it less about politics, more about patients." "That sounds like you," she said. He hesitated. "I wanted to ask what you think before I accept." Her brow furrowed. "Why me?" "Because every good choice I've made in the last 2 years started with listening to you." Evelyn smiled, warmth flickering behind her eyes. "Then listen again. Say yes." He laughed softly. "That's all the encouragement I needed." As the afternoon light faded, they sat together on a weathered pier while Noah fished beside them with stick and string. "You ever imagine we'd end up here?" she asked. "Every day I hope we might," he said. She rested her head against his shoulder. "It's not the same as before." "I don't want before," he said quietly. "I want now." The wind caught her hair. The ocean breathed against the pilings, and time seemed to still, the kind of peace that comes only after surviving a war together. Months passed, gentle as turning pages. Noah grew taller, started middle school, joined the Junior Robotics Club. Evelyn's research from the Heart Center got published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Grayson's program cut hospital costs across the city by 15%. They weren't perfect. They argued, they disagreed, they learned, but their love had learned a new rhythm. Not fire and collision, but endurance and quiet certainty. One evening, they gathered on the hospital's rooftop garden, a place Evelyn had designed herself, open to patients and staff alike. The city shimmered below, stars faint above. Grayson poured 2 cups of tea. "To the future," he said. Evelyn smiled. "To finally belonging where we are." They clinked cups. Noah appeared from behind the planter, camera in hand. "Don't move," he said. The flash popped, bright, sudden, freezing them in laughter. "Got it," he said proudly. "Family photo." Grayson chuckled. "Since when are you the photographer?" "Since always," Noah said. "I'm keeping evidence that you two can smile at the same time." Evelyn laughed, wiping her eyes. "That's proof, all right." Later that night, when the hospital had gone quiet and the city hummed beneath them, Evelyn stood at the railing, watching the reflection of lights ripple on the Charles. Grayson came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Do you ever think," he murmured, "that everything that happened, the pain, the years, was the only way we could have ended up here?" She leaned back against him. "Sometimes I do. Sometimes I think the universe had to break us to teach us what love really means." "And what does it mean now?" She turned in his arms, her smile small but certain. "Not perfection, just presence." He nodded. "Then I'll be here. You already are." And for a long time, they stood like that. 2 people once separated by pride and time, now held together by something quieter, truer. Below them, the hospital lights glowed like constellations. Inside, a little boy's laughter echoed down the hallways of a building that had once symbolized everything broken between them. Now it was a monument to healing. Epilogue. 5 years later, a bronze plaque was mounted beside the main entrance in honor of Dr. Evelyn Hart in Graysonvale, whose courage and compassion rebuilt this place and reminded us that healing begins not in the body, but in the heart. Below it, in smaller letters, dedicated by Noah Hartvale, age 14. And when visitors asked the young volunteer at the reception who those people were, he'd grin and say, "That's my family. They taught me how to never give up on anyone." The story of Evelyn Hart in Graysonvale didn't end in scandal or tragedy. It ended and began with understanding. 2 hearts rebuilt, 1 family restored, and a love that finally learned to stay. Sometimes the people we lose aren't gone forever. They're just waiting for the right version of us to find them again. If this story moved you, don't forget to leave a comment below. I'd love to know which moment touched your heart the most. And if you believe that love, no matter how broken, can heal again, hit the like button, subscribe, and join me for the next story here on Heartstrings Narratives. Until next time, keep your heart open and your stories alive.